the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
Middle of June already, and another trip to South Norfolk to visit the square mile that is the home of Chris Skinner, farmer and nature lover, High Ash Farm, and we're back in your wildflower meadows.
Yes, good morning, Matthew. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to have you back again. You've got Happy Farmer this week. Well, I'm always fairly happy, but we've had a considerable amount of rain here in the preceding week. A total now of 35 millimetres, 15 millimetres in one go last night. So
that's the whole total, more than an inch, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
An inch would be 250 mil.
An inch would be 26.5 mil. Yes, so
Mr. Pedantic.
You missed your decimal point. I think we'd be underwater at that point. But we're on what's called the gun field this morning. There was a row of artillery across this field because we've got a panoramic view of Norwich to the north of where we're standing, about a mile and a half. I can see City Hall in the centre, cathedral just peeping up above the horizon there, and we're on quite heavy clay soil, very high pH. We visited one of the orchid species last week that's prolific here at the farm this year, the bee orchid. Absolutely extraordinarily beautiful, right by, it's right on the other side there. I can see somebody walking round it while we're speaking.
There's a bird of prey being mobbed there. Is that a
buzzard?
buzzard?
Yeah, no, that's a buzzard there with a flotilla, or whatever you'd like to call it, of two jackdaws behind it. Absolutely wonderful. And the buzzard has got two young in the 4 acres of woodland just over there called Woodcock Wood, and I think that'll be the male, and he's patrolling his territory, just making sure. But yesterday I saw him bringing, I wasn't quite so pleased with him, he was carrying a weasel underneath, and the crows were very upset about this because he will take young crows, he'll take young jackdaws off the nest, and he's just skirting round. So he's here all day, just circling round like that, just checking his territory. Swallows right next to us, just sweeping round the tree. It's a little bit cooler this morning.
They're just inches off the ground, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And then the last few mornings behind us, we've had a marsh harrier hunting over this wildflower field and the hayfield beside us, just swooping down quite low above the crop, and it's actually after the skylarks which are nesting in this field. So you do have to stand back sometimes and sort of bite your tongue because you can get sort of very carried away with the things that will take the things that you love or you're trying to protect or encourage, and nature at the end of the day knows best, and it's us that interfering quite often. Anyway, let's just turn round because we're on a public footpath here, Boudica Way, which is a public right-of-way on the far side of High Ash Farm, the eastern side. We're more or less in the centre of the farm, and this is a public footpath. I keep it well mown. It's about 12 feet wide at this point, and each year, diagonally right across the farm, we have this lovely mixture of pyramidal orchids, which we're now going to look at, bee orchids, and several other species. Common spotted orchid is the third one, which we might visit next week, but they all come out, they have different times that they actually come into flower, and the pyramidal orchid is slightly later than the bee orchid. It happens every year. So I've mown a small circle out into the crop here. I pasted out carefully in front of the mower, put some canes in which have yellow tops to tell me where the orchids are or are about to come into flower, because they're nearly invisible before they pop open like this. And they're really one of our most spectacular orchids, and really, really colourful as well. So just coming into flower now, and once more I've telephoned our local photographer, poor Laura Kiffin, to come along and photograph them for us for the High Ash Farm Facebook site. So here we are, and you can actually look out into the little circle there, and there's some magnificent ones. They've loved this rain. I thought they would come into flower at about 100 millimetres tall, about 4 inches tall, and this is what they look like, Matthew, just before they come out. It's a tiny little deep purple spike.
It's a really juicy colour.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Especially with the rain, as you mentioned.
Yes, another one just there. So I've got it exactly right. So anybody who's interested in orchids, and last week, at the weekend, once the podcast went out, we had the local Orchid Society visit High Ash Farm, and they wanted to bring all their members here to enjoy the orchids, and so they asked permission to where to park.
We call them the Orchid Squad.
They are the Orchid Squad, yes. And there's another one you can see, almost invisible. Can you see through there? Just about to come into flower.
Oh, yes.
Yep, absolutely beautiful. So they range in height from about 6 inches at the moment to that's 150 mil to about 300 mil, which is getting on for a foot tall. There's one out there which is getting on for that in full flower.
And it's that sort of cone shape, isn't it,
Yes.
which gives it its name?
Yes, it is. It's a pyramidal orchids. Some people actually, when they see the name written down, kind of change the name of the orchid and call it a pyramidal orchid. It's really so it really causes people who love orchids to sort of froth at the mouth a bit. But you don't say we're going to Egypt to see the pyramids, you say the pyramids. So that's why it's pyramidal orchid.
You say potato, I say potato.
Yes, exactly, yes. So there we are. Anyway, if we walk round the little circle a bit, you can see there, I was going to call them common spotted orchids, but there's loads now coming out.
Oh, we can
and they're
see them
just
really close.
Extraordinarily beautiful, aren't they? You can see why they attract attention in the way that they do, because the flowers are really spectacular. 3 little lobed petals at the bottom, and then quite a long, if I gently fold that over, you'll see the base of each petal where it joins its stem. There's a long tube, and there is pollen and nectar down there. So unlike the bee orchids which we visited last week, which are self-pollinating, these do require pollination. And the other thing about it is the bee orchid, once it flowers, it dies. This will carry on from year to year. The double ovoid tuber will survive overall. It takes an awful lot of energy. So again, it's another one of those species which is hugely variable in how frequent you'll see it in any particular location. So that's the other characteristic of it. But last year and the year before, there was a fair smattering. So we're looking at about a square metre, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One here, there's 8 per square metre just here, to give you an idea of the population.
There's another baby one coming through.
Yes, there is, and there's literally tens of thousands of them now. So I am so proud, which is the other reason you've got this huge smiling farmer this morning, because it's quite something. This particular wildflower field's been down since 2006, so it's his 20th birthday, and it's really got going. So what's special about the orchids? Why do I get interested in them? It's because their habitat's become quite scarce in the UK. A lot of land has been ploughed up, particularly downland in the 1940s and 50s. A lot of their natural habitat got reclaimed, and their requirement is also quite exacting. They like high pH soil, which they have here at the farm. We've got chalk underneath us, so if we dug down about 1 foot to 18 inches, although we're on top of a hill, it would almost be pure white underneath us. And So worms, which there's a very high population here, bring up the soil from down below and take down organic matter, humus, into the soil, and that's what the orchids like. So the question is always in my head, have the orchids always been here in the form of seed which wasn't able to germinate, or was it introduced in the wildflower mixes which I sowed here? And so it's one of those questions that I'll never be able to answer.
They seem to like it here, though,
They
so
do.
maybe they did historically belong here.
Yes, it's quite possible. So either's a possibility. And now we've got all the natural flora and some fauna here as well. As I mentioned, we've got the marsh harrier floating around. So as I'm talking, I'm actually looking around all the possible locations to see a marsh harrier, which will be a first with you. Now, the other interesting thing about the orchids is the bee orchid and the pyramidal orchid here produce vast amounts of seed. So this one over here is now coming into flower. Just one flower will produce up to 10,000 seeds. It's unimaginable. Morning. Hello. We've got a black Labrador. Yes, so sort of worst possible enemy going past. So he has to have a word in every podcast that we undertake, and unfortunately the walkers have gone past, and there's been no vet's bills due.
Thank goodness for that.
Yes.
But presumably they produce all those seeds because not many of them will ever be effective.
No, that's right. They're so light as well. If you have a strong wind, when the seeds are ready to drop, they will actually go off in the wind, and it's just amazing. So it's the county flower of the Isle of Wight, hence the chalk which I mentioned, which favours the orchids. Many of the species of orchids which grow in the UK comes in the Yorkshire coast, snakes down through East Anglia, through Norwich to the north of us, heads off southwards. Some places it's only 5 miles wide, this seam of chalk which comes from millennia ago. It's all sea creatures which died, and it's the remnants of their shells, if you like. Then it snakes down under the North and South Downs and heads out down right on the south coast. So you know the White Cliffs of Dover. You actually can see the chalk seam as it leaves the UK, Isle of Wight again, and then it goes into the sea under the water. We've also got chalk reef not far from where we are, under the North Norfolk coast there, and the River Tass down in the bottom of the valley, right on the edge of High Ash Farm. When we have floods and the water scours the bottom of the river at high speed, it suddenly becomes white. It looks as though somebody's been along the river bottom with a very large broom and swept it clean. It's really lovely to see.
So Tass is a quintessential chalk stream.
Absolutely, yes.
And there are more within 50 miles of here than any other part of the world.
Exactly that, and that in itself is a special habitat, as this is. I mean, there's few places in Norfolk or East Anglia where I can kneel on the ground and see 8 orchids in a square metre. It's just extraordinary. And then, because I'm down here on my knees, I don't mind getting damp knees this morning. There's still some residue of last night's rain here. I'm looking across and I can see loads of bumbles. Although it's cool, bumblebees can work at a lower temperature than honeybees. Yes, you got one just on the tip of your...
They're not making much noise this morning,
No,
but they're enjoying the oxeye daisies as well.
That's a youngster, you see, so that's going to be working, taking pollen and nectar back to the nest.
Here we are, here's one.
Yeah, there's one. You might get a recording from him.
He's right in the heart of the flower. This is Phacelia, is it? No.
No, that's sandfoin.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're quite discreet, these bees of yours.
They are, of course, yes. They like to just get on with life and not be famous by being their wing beats being spread all over the world. So honeybees live life in the faster lane, if you like. Honeybee has 240 wing beats a second. A good old bumble, a buff-tailed young bumble like we just saw, about 110 wing beats per second, so about half the speed. That's why the tone of the flying is slightly different. But I thought we'd come and enjoy this because another 2 to 3 weeks, they'll all be over and they'll be shedding. In fact, it's just as important, although they're in flower at the moment and we can enjoy that, the next one is almost more important for them. It's when they finish flowering and shed the seed, which either blows away. If it lands on a suitable spot, then they'll thrive. But it's all over this diagonal here, goes right across the farm where this clay is quite close to the surface, and there's skylark. They're just circling down right over where its nest is, just hovering over the nest area. That's probably the male. He's going to come back and bring some food because the young skylarks are actually in the nest cups. And I do something peculiar here in the winter months. It's just flying up again. He's probably singing, actually.
He's in full voice. Sounding fantastic.
Way up above us now, just watching the territory. Wings outspread, tail spread out, and he's going to come down again.
He's doing a bit of aerobatics there.
I would think his wife, the partner, is... There he goes. He folds his wings up at the last minute, and...
This is ideal for nesting, though, for skylarks, isn't it? I think you've probably got several on this.
Yes, there is. There's a really good population here. And the peculiar thing I do in the winter is to ask the girls who have the horses here, particularly the ponies, to ride on here in wet weather across the wildflower fields. And what happens is the horse hoof prints go into the clay and they make tiny indentations. And then the skylarks will come in. They will bring a little bit of nesting material in, and the nest cup is then at ground level or even just beneath ground level, and it helps to secrete the skylarks from any predators flying over the top. Another one up in the air right in front of us. There we are. Orchids and skylarks in one hit. You couldn't make it up.
And swallows, buff-tailed bumblebees,
Yeah.
oxeye daisies, buzzards.
Yes, yeah.
And rat the dog.
And yes, to finish the equation off. There's not much of an equation when he barks like that. Yes, I do tease the walkers and I say you have to be really careful with him because he actually killed a Great Dane last week. And they, what? Goodness, no. Well, I said it was laying at the entrance to the farmyard there, and the lady who owned it was very upset. And she said, and people say, well, how did that happen? I said, he got stuck in its throat. Another bad joke.
Yeah. But we still enjoyed the pyramidal orchids.
Yes, pyramidal orchids. Come on.
Let's look at an email from Nicholas Warner. Chris, he says, after some time, I have managed to convince a customer of mine to plant up a large old arable field with a wildflower mix. Now all the flowers are slowly coming out in turn. They're looking amazing, lots of insects. What's the next stage for the field? A local farmer's saying time to plough it in, but I'm sure this is not the case. I thought maybe leave it till next spring.
It's quite possible that that is the case. If it's just been grown as a green manure crop, then it has a very short duration. Although it can look attractive, things like Phacelia would be used as a green manure. Now, if it's a proper wildflower field and the mixture's correct, you can actually wait till everything is finished flowering. If it's a good mixture, it will have a continuous flowering period over the summer months, then produce seed. That's the time to mow it. and the important thing is to remove the residue so you don't increase the fertility of the field. Actually remove all the crop residue from it, and then start again. And you can add some more seeds sometimes to the mix to sort of enhance what's growing there. Depends what the original mixture is.
Nicholas goes on to say, I watch hornets feeding on the dark excretion coming from an oak tree. Possibly signs of oak dieback, he says.
Oh, right, that's really interesting. Now, we're just by coincidence happen to be standing near one of the oak trees on High Ash Farm, and it's extruding is the word.
Oh, is it the dark colour
Can
there?
you see the dark colour on that oak tree over there?
That's not just last night's rain.
No, if we walk up, it's happening all over the farm. It's a little bit of a worry because it's the precursor of a fungus, and it's called honey fungus. It's unlikely to be oak dieback, and you'll see, although it's a cool day, there's lots of insects feeding here. There's a bumblebee on the trunk, and the secretion or the extrusion is obviously very, very high in sugars. There's common wasps feeding there.
Tiny little wasps.
Yes, no, they're normal size wasps, because what you're looking at right beside them, you can come in closer, don't be scared, Gudgin, it's not going to hurt you, is a hornet.
Oh, and he's a monster, he is, isn't he? Look at the size of him.
No, it's a young female hornet, and it just had a tussle with the bumblebee, and that's what you call a hornet. It's absolutely glorious condition. Just caught a fly. No, it's caught a wasp.
Oh, wow, look at
Yeah,
that.
and it's devouring the wasp, and it's just flown. Matthew's just taken 4 paces back, everybody.
I don't want to be stung by a hornet.
Oh, he was more interested in taking the breakfast back. So that's a young hornet, and what it's doing is gathering high protein food and taking back to the hornet's nest, which is probably in the woodland behind us. It's one of Britain's rarer wasps these days, and if you have them in the garden, many people will call the local pest control officer to actually dispatch them. And I have had lots of encounters with hornets. They're all very pleasant ones. They're not as venomous as common wasps. It'll sting you for the sake of it, but they can sting you more than once, and it's a pretty powerful sting. I've had a friend who's had a sting from a hornet, and he said it's quite impressive, was the words, followed by several other words which...
But they don't go after you in the same way as a wasp.
No,
would,
they
do
don't. As I said, wasps are almost spiteful. But that one is no more. It was grabbed by the hornet, and you could see the size comparison. So
was he deploying his sting, the hornet, there? Because I noticed the abdomen sort of
the
curled
abdomen
up.
came up and it stung the wasp, and so it will then take it back. It's just a source of protein for the young hornets, which are still in the combs. It'll still be the foundation comb laid by the queen hornet, and the queen hornet was fertilised last year. She's the only living member of last year's colony. So the male hornets will have died, all the worker hornets will have died, and that nest would have reared a few queen hornets, which are really impressive, half the size of your little finger. And they have been visiting this tree trunk as well, and it's just coincidence. So you can see this black sort of juice coming out of the trunk, called extrusion. It's rather like sort of lava coming out of a volcano. It's extruded from the core of the earth, and this is being extruded from the core of the tree. So it's sap coming out, rich in sugars, and that's why we've got bumblebees there just on the tip of my finger. There's a buff-tailed bumblebee, there's a wasp, and butterflies. If the sun was on the trunk, although we're sort of mid to late morning now, there would be peacock butterflies and painted lady butterflies, as well as a few red admirals here. So poor Laura Cuffin is going to have another invitation to... I do have to laugh, to actually come and photograph my hornets on the tree trunk, and we hope she can do that. and not do what you did and go in reverse.
Well, come on though, last year we ended up in a tree, didn't we, looking at where the hornets had been.
Yes, because I love them so much, and it's all part of natural history. So if you're lucky enough to have a hornet's nest in your roof, then just leave them. They're just not interested in us. They'll carry on their life. They are different to common wasps in that they will fly and hunt at night, so they will also catch wasps as well. So there we are, and you can see some of the little fungus actually fermenting here in the cracks of the bark, little bubbles of sort of
That's
white.
what that is. Is it like cotton wool?
Yes, there it goes. Look, and there's a bumble just come in, and bearing in mind it's cool this morning, and those wasps look tiny, don't they, in comparison to that hornet? That's what you call a proper insect, boy. That was. Yes. So there we are.
I'm worried about the tree though.
Yes, it is possible. So
is it in distress?
It will be. So the problem is, if it's honey fungus, there's nothing we can do, and the only way you can identify it is to drill into the tree and send a sample of the sap off to a laboratory. But the other way is just to wait till the autumn and see if we've got the fruiting bodies appear. It's quite a lethal fungus. It will kill living trees. The technical term for it is called Armillaria malea, the honey fungus. It's also called the bootlace fungus. So if I was cruel enough to remove some of the bark, we might actually find some of the bootlaces, which look exactly what it says on the tin. They look like black bootlaces, and it goes up to the trunk. But this doesn't go up very far, about 8 feet up the trunk. And then the extrusion actually stops higher up. But it's quite a fascinating thing, and able to answer that question bang on with a good illustration like that. There's nothing like a good old hornet first thing in the morning.
Billing and cooing, the pigeons of High Ash Farm. Among the cast of characters that we meet each week.
And I'm the next character that you're likely to meet on the Countryside podcast. And we've got a small favour to ask. There are certain costs involved which we can't avoid. What we're asking for is a small contribution to help the running costs of this podcast.
And you can find all the details on the High Ash Farm website, and you can make a monthly or one-off payment. Everything's gratefully received, and let's keep this marvellous slice of wildlife podcasting going with Chris Skinner and the pigeons.
Why not? Yes, it's absolutely fantastic.
More letters and emails coming up in a little while. We've got some rain on the way here, Chris.
Yes, I think so. It'll make the smile on my face even wider than it already is. This time of the year, we call it a pound a drop. So you can see why farmers start smiling when you have adequate rain, because we've been drought-stricken in the eastern counties for quite a while. But it's sort of a little bit cool this morning. The wind's blowing, and I want to introduce you to some new plants, which from time to time we have some quite unusual ones here at the farm, and they grow in various locations, and this one really doesn't look too much to surprise you or to look at.
It's tall.
It is tall. It is in flower at the moment. This one's about 1 metre tall. There's several growing here, and they grow in various patches all over High Ash Farm. It's got lance-shaped leaves low down. The stem goes all the way up almost continuously till it starts the flowering. And the flowering, well, you can only call them inconspicuous. The main flower is on the stem, and it just curls over at the top.
It's like a long pipe cleaner.
Exactly that. Yes, that's a good description for it. And you can see the little male parts, the stigma and the anthers at the top of the plant. So it doesn't look too inspiring or interesting. And the leaves are green obviously lance-shaped, about 75 millimetres long. That's about 3.5 inches in old money. And it's, well, that's about all you can say about it, except till I tell you its name. It's got an unusual name. It's called weld, W-E-L-D. And it's what I do in the workshop. Most days I'm repairing things by welding, by putting things back together. But that's not where it gets its name from. It's also got a bit of an extra bit to its name. It's called dyer's weld. And the dyer's bit is the interesting portion of it. And it's one of the first dyes that were ever extracted and used in the UK, right back in Neolithic times. And I should really take you back to my living room and get some of my Neolithic flint axes and arrowheads out and compare the two, because the two are linked, and that the Neolithic people who inhabited where we're standing, or 5000 BC, that makes it 7,000 years ago, used this plant to boil it and to extract the most luxurious yellow dye, a really powerful yellow dye that dyed the early cloths and woven fabrics that were made by Neolithic tribes way back then in history, and it's continued to be used right into the early 1800s, the 19th century in fact, and still was used and grown commercially as well all over East Anglia, particularly in the eastern counties, and grown as a crop, as well as sort of complementing the natural environment where it can be found. So it's a natural native, I was going to call it a weed, but it is a wildflower, but it looks very different, very uninviting, very unimpressive, until you realise the dye that comes through it, and people just sort of just grew it and started to commercialise it and have whole fields of it. And sometimes it is planted with cereals and then hand harvested before the cereal crop was actually mown. So it was quite an interesting history. So there we are.
Weld.
A new one for you, weld. Yes, so normally...
And how has this got here, do you think?
No, it's probably just natural. It's been here since I have been a child. It grows in this particular location every year.
Just at the end of a hedgerow,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes, it's usually a few hundred plants just growing here. And occasionally I have people who are interested in fabrics, in the early dye industry and textiles, in fact, to come and harvest some of it. And all plants, I was quite surprised, because the lady that gathered some from here last year, she did just cut the stem off level with the ground. She took the roots as well, and the yellow dyes contained in all parts of the flower. I was really quite amazed, and I said, don't worry, because it's a biennial plant, it will grow from the seed. But the seed production, you can see, we were talking about the orchids earlier, producing perhaps, one flower of a pyramidal orchid, 10,000 seeds. And this plant isn't far behind, because the little seed pods extend all the way up in what you call the pipe cleaner construction, and a few spurs coming off which have a lesser number of flowers on them. But the one growing beside it is almost just a spike coming out the top of the flower, and just extraordinary. So there we are, a little bit of history for you. On appearance it just seems quite dull, but it's got an interesting history linked to early inhabitants of the British countryside, and that's what fascinates me, going back, linking the history and how important these plants were. But to learn to colour your clothes, and of course that still happens today. It's modern fashion. We use lots of synthetic dyes in our clothes today, whereas this is a good old, very, very bright, and we still have fragments of the early cloth that was dyed by weld years and years ago. I'd like to come out with a joke, but there we are. There's very few jokes about weld or welding, but there is one. She was only a welder's daughter, but she had acetylene legs. Sorry.
Cut.
Delete.
More lovely rain falling from the heavens, and this is just gentle rain, but it'll have an impact.
Yes, absolutely, Matthew. As I said, we've been drought stricken for some time. Busy at the farm this morning. It's always busy here. We've got a school visit happening. I can just hear some voices way in the distance.
There's a loud tractor that's pulling the trailer with the children on.
Yes.
But the children's voices go even above the tractor.
Exactly, because they're out in the countryside. They're seeing what we do here at High Ash Farm. It's all part of their education programme, and yes, right back in the 1950s my father linked to a school in Norwich, and children used to come out as Norwich City School for boys and girls, so we had mixed groups coming out and they could watch the milking in the dairy parlour. And then I carried it on through the 1980s and 90s, a group called NEFL, which is Norfolk Farm Education Link, and I must have done 50 or 60 visits with trailers and tractors at the farm here, and take various groups of children round and explain about modern agriculture. The combine was always a focal point, and so the children are always very excited to see wildlife. You can see deer, some of the predatory birds, skylark flying up again above our heads, and way up there, and we're on a sharp south-facing slope, and I can see some bumblebees working, and this is a really unusual portion of High Ash's wildflower offering this year. It's open to the public, as are the 2 orchid walks at the moment, all free of charge. And in front of us are tall spikes of bright blue flowers. Lots of bumblebees working on them, although it's spitting with rain. And I'll just walk you up to one, and so we can have a look. We have visited a close relative of it early on this year's podcasting, quite early in the spring, and it's called common bugloss. And this one is a close relative. They're both members of the forget-me-not family. And this one is called Viper's bugloss. What a spectacular name.
As in the snake?
Yes, and it's hairy and quite bristly, and so run my finger up and down the stem, and like that, there we are. And you can see the leaves are quite hairy. The stem and the stalk of the plant is absolutely covered in minute hairs with little red spots on the stalks as well, and that's meant to look like a snake. The actual flower heads curl over, and that's meant to look like a snake as well, and it's in full flower at the moment, and it is the most beautiful deep blue. I don't know quite how to describe the colour of blue. It's kind of Wedgwood blue. It's really spectacular. And all parts of the flower are meant to sort of look like a snake. So that curling portion of the flowers which are just going to open, some just before they open, quite extraordinary, they're bright pink look. And so you have the pink and the blue on one plant. But it's not until you get to the seed, which absolutely is a perfect mimic of an adder's head, and that's what gives it its name. It's all to do with the seed production, although other parts of the plant are meant to look like snake-like. There's no mistaking the shape of the seed. It's a flattened head, and the little pattern on the top of the seed as well perfectly mimics a viper, which is our only poisonous snake. So the plant was always, the scientific name is Echium, it was always referred to with some caution. So there we are. It's hairy, so hence the bugloss bit. Literally, bugloss means ox's tongue. So whether it's the common bugloss or the viper's bugloss. They've both got this hairy nature on them, and if you just run your fingers up and down the stem there, you'll feel it's all very prickly almost and rough.
Yeah, it hasn't shaved this morning.
Yes, exactly. That's what it looks like, and so that's how it gets the bugloss portion
And
of
the
the
spots
name.
looks like measles.
Yes, it does on the stem. Yes, it's meant to, because some of the snakes in the UK are patterned like that, and that all enhances this sort of name. But it's an extraordinary sight.
You've
for
got
anybody,
dozens and dozens of them
yes,
here.
anybody who hasn't seen it, I've cut another strip just above the top of this so you can walk past it. The best way to describe it if you're growing plants in your garden is lupins, although it's not closely related at all. The actual flower stem does look like lupins with the flowers all coming off the central stem. So there we are. I think we'll retreat or repair back to the truck now because we are now getting wet. I don't mind that. I'd rather be in the truck because that allows the water on the field rather than us keeping it off the ground. So that's my excuse. So there we are. Yeah. So there we are, another one that's in flower at the moment. Middle of June onwards it flowers, and certainly till about mid-July as its normal flowering time. It's spectacular, and it's right by one of the permissive walks here at the farm, so well worth a visit.
Right, we're back in the truck now. The rain is falling and we were getting a little wet, so I think this is quite sensible. Postcard, and there's a puffin there and various other creatures that you can find on St Kilda, which the postcard tells us is a World Heritage Site. And Janice has sent the postcard. I'm lucky enough to be briefly visiting this beautiful and fascinating island, and I'll be listening to your podcast from here tomorrow. St Kilda, look, there's a postmark for St Kilda.
Yes, absolutely fascinating, and thank you very much. We get correspondence now from all over the world, including some of the Scottish Isles, and that particular site with the really interesting bird life there, the little St Kilda wren, which is a little bit larger than our normal local ones. So thank you very much for that and for thinking of us and listening to the podcast.
Dave Barton says, Chris, when I sent you the sand martin pictures a few weeks ago, you said you'd like to know where they nest. They do actually nest in the riverbank. It's around Cadover Bridge on Dartmoor. Surprising, as in sunny weather it can get a bit like Blackpool Pleasure Beach here. It suffers from being the first pretty place from Plymouth to Plympton with a car park. Best avoided in the summer. What a wonderful place, though. I went to Emsworthy Mire on Dartmoor yesterday. It's near to Widdicombe in the moor with Uncle Tom Cobley and all. It's a Devon Wildlife Trust reserve. I frequented a fair bit. One of the highlights was seeing a redstart. I'm sure you know that start or sturt was Old English for tail. And here are some pictures. Oh, wow. Look at that, the redstart.
Absolutely perfect. What a picture. And going back to the sand martins briefly, they don't seem to mind human company. And the ones we visited on a previous podcast about a month ago at the local quarry, they were busy nesting and feather catching and all sorts of normal behaviour, with the huge industrial diggers just 100 feet or so away from them, completely unperturbed. So they will tolerate human habitation as well, but interesting to see them nesting on a riverbank. So really great stuff. Thank you for that.
Well done, Dave. And Tom in Cheshire, I wondered what your views are on the advice the RSPB has recently put out on refraining from feeding the birds during the summer and autumn period. I understand the urgency, the necessity and the reasoning. Personally, though, I find it a struggle to change my mindset that not feeding the birds is now helping them as much as feeding them. I've also made flat feeders all around my garden, but I think the RSPB are stopping the sale of those feeder types.
Yes, I've heard of this news as well. I personally stopped feeding birds towards once we got into May. There's enough natural food about, so I close all the feeders down at the farm, and it is for a particular reason. It's a health reason. There's a little parasite called trichomoniasis, which affects particularly the finch species. So the worst one affected in the UK at the minute, which has caused a huge decline, is the greenfinch. Second on the list is the chaffinch as well, and we're a little bit worried that a few cases have been found in bullfinches, one of my most spectacular finch species, and they have trouble. If they are affected, they have trouble breathing and eating, and eventually it ends in death. So the reason is the parasite is more prevalent in the summer months and can last on the feeders and in bird baths as well. So it's recommended now if you have a bird bath in your garden, is to at least wash it out once a day, which is quite a task. I've kept mine going, but I am observing that, and I'm washing it out with a power hose, which I have quite close at hand every day, and filling it up with fresh mains water. Mains water is quite important because it is chlorinated here in the UK, and it helps to control the parasite which causes this horrible disease.
And just time this week to look at some photographs sent in by Sheila of some swallows, quite big baby swallows these, look like they're ready to fly the nest. Thought you'd like to see my fledgling swallows who have chosen to use an old blackbird's nest this year in my stable. We popped the wire up when we had a cat try to get to the blackbirds when they were in residence. Yes, and there's the wire up against the wooden wall there. I've put up 2 swallow nest cups, of which one is occupied. I've sighted them either side of a beam, but they only ever use one side. Maybe I should re-sight the unused one later in the year when they have left.
No, I think you can leave it where it is if it's each side of the beam and one side's being used. Swallows are very much like that. They will nest together. Some of my nests in the nest cups inside the old stable block at High Ash Farm are only 4 to 6 inches apart, and both the nests can be occupied. They seem to get on. They're quite gregarious swallows. They love nesting together communally like that. Thank you very much.
Thanks to everyone who's contacted the podcast, and we've got quite a few other messages that we haven't got time for this week, but suffice it to say we will get to you on future episodes. In the meantime, for any more questions and comments, please do send them through on email, chris@highashfarm.com. And there's the website to peruse as well, highashfarm.com/podcast. And if you go there, you can find out about donating to the podcast as well. Plus, if all that wasn't enough, there's also the Facebook page, isn't there? High Ash Farm Facebook, where you can see in living colour and videos all the things we talk about.
Yes, those hornets as well. That's a proper insect, Matthew.
Proper job. See you next week then.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it already.